Welcome back to another episode of Wednesday Wisdom on the Educational AD Podcast. We'll be right back with today's Wednesday Wisdom guest, but first let's give a shout out to our podcast partners, the Florida Coaches Coalition, the global community of women in high school sports, and We Coach. Check out these two great organizations and see how you can become a part of them. And now please stay with us. Don't fast forward. Let's have a quick word from our podcast sponsors. We want to thank Athletic Surveys for sponsoring the AD Toolbox segment of the podcast. Athletic Surveys are a quick, easy way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire athletic program. Athletic directors typically only hear from the 2%, those disgruntled parents or maybe a frustrated student athlete. We need to hear from those 2%, but we also need to hear from the 98% that really love and support our program. And that's a tremendously valuable tool to have when you're meeting with a frustrated parent or your principal or your school board. Go to Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. Let them show you how to have a custom survey for your stakeholders. That's Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack at athleticsurveys.com. Check them out today and let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. We also want to say thanks to Final Forms, the industry leader in forms and registration. Give your coaches access to the tools that they need to help service their teams and their parents, help with coaches' communication, help your stakeholders with all the forms that come when you have an athlete in the house. And for athletic directors, Final Forms can help you with eligibility, with rosters, and all the reports that come across your desk. To get started on the Final Forms team, go to finalforms.com/Jake. That's finalforms.com/Jake to get started with Final Forms. We also want to thank Sideline Interactive indoor scoring tables and video boards. One of the best purchases I ever made was a Sideline Interactive indoor score table. It's tremendously versatile. Of course, we use it for home games, but we also use it for pep rallies, for signing ceremonies. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and schedule a live web demo to see their tables and boards in action. That's sidelineinteractive.com. We also want to thank Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. Go to hometownticketing.com. They're going to show you how to sell your tickets for all your events, not just athletics, but school plays, concerts, dances, even graduation. And during the setup, you're going to have a dedicated client success manager that's providing you hands-on support every step of the way and beyond after you start selling those tickets. That's every step of the way. Go to hometownticketing.com to get started. Simple and easy online ticketing. We also want to thank Gipper. Go to Gipper.com and see how athletic directors are creating world-class marketing content for their school's social media. You can do it in seconds, and you don't need any design experience. Use our podcast code ADPOD10, and you'll get 10% off. That's Gipper.com. Create custom content for your school's social media channel. We also want to thank Wall of Fame by Vital Signs. You know, they're on a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. The Wall of Fame is an interactive touchscreen video console that highlights the top performers of your school, both past and present, in athletics, academics, and the arts. But it's so much more than that. The Wall of Fame is an extensive content program that allows you to tell more compelling stories that will better engage your audience. Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com, and once you're ready to purchase, use the link vitalsignswalloffame.com/Jake, and you'll get 5% off. That's vitalsignswalloffame.com/Jake. Check them out today. We want to thank Huddle for their support. Go to huddle.com and change the way you see the game. Huddle is going to provide your coaches, your teams, and your athletes the tools that they need to play at the highest level. It's a complete professional grade solution, and you'll find it at huddle.com. We believe in sports, and teams believe in Huddle. Join the 6 million users and find out how to turn your school into a Huddle school. And we want to thank Snap Mobile. Go to snapraise.com and check out their entire suite of platforms designed to help you as an athletic director do your job better. You have Snap Store, Snap Manage, Snap Connect, and Snap Raise is their fundraising platform. We've used it with great success, and they've helped schools just like yours raise over $700 million. They even have a program where you can get your funding before you actually start your fundraiser. I don't think anyone else offers that. Go to snapraise.com. Again, check out the entire platform. That's snapraise.com. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Wednesday Wisdom on the Educational AD Podcast. We've got a really good friend today. She was in the original Athletic Director Toolbox collection. Our guest is Melanie Redd. Melanie is the founder of Melanie Redd Performance Training. She is a professional strength coach, strength consultant. She works with a number of high schools and just a ton of student athletes in the Dayton, Ohio area. Very much in demand. She also appears on another podcast as a strength and conditioning expert, and we're very fortunate to add her to our Wednesday Wisdom team. So, Melanie Redd, thanks for coming on. And what do you have for our listeners today on Wednesday Wisdom?
Well, thanks for having me, Jake. It's been a while since we've done this, so I'm really excited. So today's topic, I feel like, is a good timing, and I'm just kind of going to be a little selfish and kind of talk about a topic that is very relevant to the work that I'm doing right now as well, the topic itself is in-season lifting. Right. And this is a really interesting time of year because as winter teams are in postseason play, and spring teams go officially in Ohio go in season today. So tryouts for spring starts this week. And so I wanted to talk about the importance of in-season lifting. And I'm kind of talking to like coaches and athletic directors here. And just because it's really hard to schedule that time when you're so concerned about X's and O's, right? Like the coach wants to make sure that the kids are skill-wise prepared and ready to go for a season that's about to start. If you're in winter sports right now, then the concern is how deep into playoffs can we go? And so often the lifting in season can get kind of pushed to the side, but there's some really specific reasons why we don't want to do that. And I want to read, if you don't mind, I don't know if this is allowed or not, but sure. I'm going to read, I have on Twitter, and I'm like one of those people on Twitter. I'm on there a lot. I don't have a huge following, but that's okay with me. But my pinned tweet, which is my most popular tweet of all time, I think really kind of hits home with people. And it says, not lifting in season will show by the end of regular season. In-season demands are high. If nothing else, train and lift to manage the wear and tear. Now, not staying strong and powerful and explosive is a recipe for injury and performance decline. And that particular tweet blew up. Like, I couldn't believe it. It was shared like hundreds of times. And that was a few years ago. That was in 2019. And it's still actually once a week that tweet gets retweeted. That's when I'm like, how is anybody even seeing that when it was a 2019 tweet? But it's obviously my pin tweet. Anyway, Twitter aside, our whole goal for an off-season and preseason program really starts with building durability, right? We certainly want our kids to have athletic skill development, which is what a head coach and assistant coaches, are doing with our athletes. The strength coach's job is to create a durability that leads to stronger, faster, and more explosive and powerful athletes. The beauty of durability is that the same things that make our kids durable are the things that lead to enhanced performance, right? So there's nothing extra that needs to really be done in terms of, managing wear and tear. But the way I always present this to coaches who are concerned about giving up some practice time during the season is that durability piece and building the durability. But the only way to keep the durability is to continue to lift throughout the season. And you want your most capable, most athletic kids to be available. We actually want everybody to be available, right? I want second string, third string. We want all of those kids to be healthy and available throughout the season as much as possible. So where that starts to go awry is a coach that's got a particularly tough week ahead of them, in terms of competition. And they're thinking, we need more practice. We need more practice. So let's cancel the lift this week. And a lot of the work that I do with coaches is in educating them in, one, how many lifts do we need a week in the off and preseason? And that is really based on the team and the demands of the sport and how long, they've had a lifting program. Some have never. And, then when we get to that season, how are we going to maintain this so that coach doesn't feel panicked that they're giving up too much time? But we want to keep these kids in the weight room consistently. So in order to keep it, we have to continue to lift in order to manage the wear and tear. I think any strength coach can sell this to a head coach by letting them know, in the weight room in season, our job is not to make these kids tired. It's to manage wear and tear. It's to build the bodies up, and they should leave that lift feeling energized, versus maybe in the off and preseason when we're building a base and we don't have to worry about games in the week. Then those lifts are, tend to be a little more demanding, maybe a little harder, and maybe it's something that they need to recover from. Whereas in season, the lifts should help the game and practice recovery, if that makes any sense. So I think what I want to talk to people about today is, if you have a strength coach or if you're doing a strength and conditioning program, is to really have a solid plan for continuing that into the season. So case in point, if your team works out or lifts in off in preseason, let's say they've got a good solid 4 to 6 months up to the season starting, and they've been going 2 or 3 days a week, and they've had great attendance and really good program adherence, and everyone is way faster, way stronger, way more explosive, and more athletic than they were 6 months ago. Then even skipping 1 week of lifting could mean they're going 2 weeks between lifts for an in-season program. If your in-season program says we're going to do 1 45-minute lift a week and that's all we got time for, if you cancel that, then that's 2 weeks between their lifts, right? And it's about at that 10-day mark, in my experience, where I found with this age of high school athletes, at about the 10-day mark, if they're not lifting at all, they will start to experience feelings of not being as strong, not being as explosive, and not being as powerful, right? So whether it's perceived or actual, it's problematic in that regard. And then if you pick it back up the next week, your strength coach is trying to play catch up now and trying to figure out, okay, now what? Now, what do I do? Can we get it back on track in a week? Or is this, just a derailment that I'm just going to be constantly trying, to fix? So the best way to avoid that is to just plan out the season, if you can, at least the month, with your lifts. And then I would say to strength coaches, you have to be flexible on your time. If a coach says our only time available is 7 o'clock on Friday night, you got to be in the weight room at 7 o'clock on a Friday night. Like it just, or a Sunday. If it's a Sunday, okay, I'll be there. I think that's, really important for both parties to be on a schedule, to be organized. But I think a strength coach who really cares about lifting in season has to have some fluidity in their schedule and some flexibility as well. When I look at every week, and right now it's going to get a little crazy with spring sports, because the weather is in Ohio, the weather is very unpredictable. So our weather range this week goes from, I think today the high is 53 Thursday, the high is 70. Friday, it's going to be in the low 30s, right? So, and there's rain somewhere in there. So what that means is the potential for a practice to not happen, or not happen as, a coach would have wanted to plan it, is there. And then when we get to actually playing games, you have rainouts. So a baseball team that's got 2 games on the schedule this week could find themselves not playing those games, and they could find themselves with 4 games on the schedule for next week. So the strength coach has to be flexible in that regard. And maybe there's some last minute, like, hey, we can't get on the field because it's mud, it's a mess.
Right.
Can you get our guys in the weight room? The answer has to be yes. I absolutely can get your guys or your girls in the weight room. And then the next week, hey, we can't do 2. We can only do 1 because we've got this crazy schedule. Okay, we'll do everything that we need to do in that hour or 45 minutes, whatever you got for me, coach. I'll make it work, and I'll make sure it's the best use of their time. And I think that sort of communication and having those relationships with coaches is really, really, really critical. And because to a degree, your strength coach is holding your head coach accountable for sticking to that part of the schedule. We have to do that in a way that doesn't make us too selfish to, the work that we do. We have to look through a really broad lens, when it comes to that sort of, communication and those sort of relationships. But at the end of the day, as long as a solid base is built in the off and preseason, and a coach can get those kids there and really adhere to that program, the less in season time you'll probably need throughout the week. So that's just kind of another incentive to get a coach to get those kids in the weight room. If I see kids 3 times a week for 4, 5 straight months, once we go in season, we can get done what we need to get done in 2 30-minute sessions, period. And we can plan it so that they do that before they go to practice, and your warm up is taken care of, right? So we're going to save you about 10-15 minutes of your practice time. If we don't have a lot of consistency in the off and preseason, but a coach still wants to incorporate lifting into the season, then we're going to really need like 2 45-minute to 60-minute sessions in season, because now we're trying to figure out, how do we get these kids stronger and more explosive and powerful and faster in season? That's a tough game to play, but we have to play it, because it might be a case where lifting is new to this group and we're still creating buy-in and we're still selling this idea. So I don't always get to choose when my opportunity to sell the idea is. And sometimes, like for instance, this week, I will see kids who are now in season, who now it can be mandatory, based on, your state's governing body rules. And so now they'll be in there, and I haven't seen them in the last 4 months. So I have to coach those kids differently during the season than the ones who,
Right.
have been showing up consistently. So it's chaos, and it's fine. Most team strength coaches accept that chaos. But there's just like, all those moving parts. And if this is my opportunity to sell a kid or group of kids on off-season lifting, then so be it. If in season is my only opportunity to create that sort of mindset and culture, then that's fine. That's what I'm working with. But ultimately, what my work is and entails is working directly with coaches and educating them on what we're doing in the off and preseason. And when I consult with a team, I always ask the coach, do you intend to continue lifting in season? Because I don't want to take your money and consult with you and build a great off season, preseason, and in season program, and then have it all fall apart for you in season, because then nobody benefits, right?
Right.
So I think just opening those conversations and being open to it and having realistic conversations over allotted time, and knowing how to ask coaches to give up 30 minutes to an hour here and there is really important conversation to have. So I just want to remind everybody, if you haven't had that conversation, excuse me, If you haven't had that conversation yet with your strength staff, or if you're a strength coach and you haven't had the conversation with your head coach, excuse me, sorry, now is the time to do it.
I'll go and rescue you there. No, you bring up some great points, particularly, the communication end and the collaboration between the head sport coach and the strength coach. That, you're both there to help make sure the student athletes experience success. And there's got to be a plan. That's communication. And again, working with each other to maximize the benefits. And then I also love how you talked about the importance of being consistent, not just from a physiological standpoint. You said, skipping the workout actually means you're missing 2 weeks, but mentally and emotionally, athletes are wired, to perform best, when there is some consistency there, and, having that workout, having those interactions with the strength coaches, as well as with their teammates in a different environment, not on the court, not on the field.
Right.
So critical. So glad you shared all that information. Melanie, if one of our listeners wanted to reach out, pick your brain a little bit more, find out, maybe some specifics, or even getting start to set up a program, what's the best way they can get a hold of you?
Best is email, and that is Melanie at mrperformancetraining.com.
Okay. Melanie Redd, certified strength coach, strength specialist in the Dayton, Ohio area. Thanks so much for sharing with us today, and all the best to all of your teams and student athletes for the coming spring season.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
For listeners, we do this every Wednesday and just about every day on the Educational AD Podcast, and our Zooms get uploaded to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We appreciate you listening. Come back next Wednesday for another Wednesday Wisdom. And like I said, just about every day on the Educational AD Podcast. We'll see you next time. Always a great time with Melanie Redd. Be sure and check out Melanie Redd Performance Training. And before we go, we do want to give another shout out to every single one of our 8 sponsors. They are 8 great companies. I've used them all. You should too. Vital Signs Wall of Fame, Final Forms, Snap Mobile and Snap Raise, Huddle, Hometown Ticketing, Gipper, Athletic Surveys, and Sideline Interactive. If you're a coach, if you're an athletic director, you should have these teams on your team. Sideline Interactive, Athletic Surveys, Gipper, Hometown Ticketing, Huddle, Snap Mobile, Final Forms, and Wall of Fame by Vital Signs. Thanks again for listening to Wednesday Wisdom. We'll see you next time on the Educational AD Podcast.